then when I have the right, there we go, when I have the right amount of coffee. Today I'm a little bit under the weather. I have this head cold thing, so I wasn't planning to record, but I can certainly send you this recording. That's totally fine. We do record these sessions. They end up in Amion's help index. So out at amion.com, there is a help link that takes you to a lot of the most commonly asked questions and answers. And there's a recorded attending demo out here. So if you want to watch a session from a few weeks back when I had no head cold and the right amount of coffee, that's the spot to find it. There's also a lot of other stuff out here in the help index. We kind of try to keep this updated, although as you'll see in a few minutes, Amion has like 20 years worth of features packed into it. So a lot of those features have little help videos and explanations, and you can use this as a resource kind of around the clock. We also have a super robust and friendly and caffeinated support team, which I'll talk about as well. So if it's during daytime hours and you want a hand building your schedule, you can reach out to us and we'll happily show you what set of features in the system works best for what you're hoping to do. So let's dive in. We're going to start off at amion.com, the website. This is a website like any other. This is our homepage. It doesn't matter what kind of web browser you use to get here. Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Explorer even, doesn't make a difference. Generally, people go to amion.com and they use their group's shared access code to see their schedule. And there are some exceptions to that for folks that have a Doximity credential. If they have a Doximity account, they can be taken straight in, since the computer or the Doximity credentials will let the system know what schedule they're a part of. But for the most part, people go to amion.com, they use their login, and they can see who's working. So in a moment, I'll explore that a little bit. I'll dive into a sample schedule and poke around and see what people can do as far as viewing the schedule out online. But I also want to mention that the other half of Amion is this pretty powerful schedule building tool. I'm pointing to the on-call icon down at the bottom of my screen here. This is a schedule building application. So a little bit like Microsoft Word or Excel, you know how you can use those applications to make a file. We'll end up using the on-call program to build a schedule file. And then the thing that we can do with that file is publish it or push it out to the website so that our staff and anybody we want to can log in online and see it. So there are kind of two halves to Amion. There's the website where things are published and visible, and there's the schedule editor, which is has a ton of features for building rules and putting people on vacation and automatic schedule generation. So when people call in and ask us for a hand with Amion, my first question is usually, are you looking at amion.com, the posted schedule, or are you looking at the on-call program, the schedule builder? So the first thing I'm going to do is log into amion.com, the website, and we'll take a look at a posted schedule out there. Anybody can do this. You guys can also use this if you ever want to explore this sample schedule. The login is site, S-I-T-E, all lowercase. What I see when I log in is this sample schedule. This is a West Coast hospital that uses Amion across the board. Anytime a hospital system or any group is using Amion for multiple schedules, we call it an enterprise account. Sounds like a fancy sales sort of word, but to us, the word enterprise just implies that Amion's being used in more than one schedule or more than one department in this case, at an institution that wants to see all of that stuff listed together. A little anecdotal background on this. I formerly I was a scheduler for a surgery department, and back in the olden days, I would have to fax my schedule into the switchboard. The switchboard would get 40 faxes, including mine. They'd have to put together a call book, a list of people on call for the month that included all those faxes. And if I had to make a change to the schedule, it was kind of chaos. I had to send another fax. They had to make sure everybody had the most up-to-date copy of the call book. A lot of room for error and a lot of confusion each month. The idea here with this list of people working is that every department you see here is managed by somebody different. Andy in anesthesia maintains his group's assignments. He controls what they do, what time they work, what their name is, all of that stuff. but he doesn't have control over cardiac surgery. There's somebody else in cardiac surgery named Carol. Carol handles the cardiac surgery schedule. And in fact, if I click on that department, I can see what Carol's created. And in a few minutes, we'll build a schedule a little bit like Carol's cardiac surgery schedule. But the idea with this big list, and this is kind of a trend these days, more hospitals are using Amion this way. They want to see who's on across the board. 20 years ago when Amion first came on the scene, we were used by a department here and a department there, but more and more these days, it's a big listing of multiple departments, those enterprise accounts that are really common. In this list, we can see that it's today, it's 9:09 a.m. out there on the West Coast. I can toggle ahead and take a look at tomorrow or use the North Star and get back to today. I can do a search by provider. All the stuff that you see out here is useful. There's not a lot of noise out here on the schedule. We can take a look at what the schedule looked like at 5 a.m. this morning when a lot of folks were still on call from the night before. There's the little red bloodshot eye icon that lets people know that this person, Dr. Chow, was on call overnight and at 5 a.m. was still working. There are a lot of cues out here and a lot of mouse over notes to explain what you're looking at. Let's see. The anesthesia schedule up at the top, it's Andy's anesthesia schedule. He's got a couple services, night 1 and night 2, that are grayed out. That's because those folks have not come online yet. They don't start until 4 p.m. Local time, so their shifts haven't begun yet. We can see, let's see, the day consult person is Dr. Kame. She is a chief resident, and over to the right, I have her contact info. So if I'm a switchboard operator who needs to get a hold of the day consult person straight away, I can see just how to do that. I could pick up a phone and dial this internal 4-digit hospital pager number, or I can click on this number. This group has messaging turned on. So I can click a number and actually send a message out from the schedule to this person. I'll say call home ASAP. And these guys have it set up so that they can get messages to their alphanumeric pagers, their old school alphanumeric pagers, and also to the Amion app. The Amion app, so this is an app for smartphones that you can get in the App Store or the Google Play Store. It's a nice way to see schedules on a small screen, and it also includes this messaging component, which is free and pretty nice. So if I want to, I can send messages right to that app and also to a person's pager. I can also send messages out to a smartphone. If I've got a Verizon phone and I want to send an SMS message, for example, I can do that. Amion's pretty good about syncing up with just about any kind of messaging system that's out there. We play nice with systems like Tiger Connect and Patient Safe and DocBook and Curator. There are like a dozen of them out there now, but we've always tried to be good about connecting with those systems. It's just a matter of sending some message out from the schedule. Let's see. That's about all that this big list is good for, seeing who's working right now, seeing what's coming up in the immediate future later that day, and having contact info to get a hold of these folks. Let's drill down again like we did before. I'll click on cardiac surgery once more to get to Carol's cardiac surgery July schedule. This is the current schedule, so it's got a North Star icon on today's date. Pretty handy. We can see this month's schedule by default. It'll always kind of land here, but all the old schedule data that Carol and Anthony, who I think is her admin, that they've published out here lives out here forever. We don't take anything down unless people ask us to. So that means I can go back in time to June or to May or to last year, and I can get to see schedule data that's been posted out here forever. Well, not forever, but at least as far back as Carol's been using this system. So she's been with Amion for a few years. So all that schedule data lives out online. We don't take anything down unless Carol asks us to remove it. If you've never seen the inside of an Amion schedule before, these icons might look a little strange. They all have mouse over notes. So when in doubt, if you hold your mouse still, you get a little explanation of what's going to happen if you click. This one says increase font size, kind of neat. This one next to it has two black arrows pointing towards each other. It says assignments by staff. I like this one. When I click it, it kind of pivots the schedule inside out and changes things so that I've got names down the y-axis here and dates across the top. I can pivot those axes again and put names across the top. So if you've been working with staff that are used to like an Excel spreadsheet that was laid out a certain way, you can also lay out the Amion schedule to match that. Kind of neat. I won't go through every icon up here at the top. Just know that they all have pretty descriptive mouse over notes. Like this one that looks like some figures standing in a row. It says staff list. That's just a simple list of staff and their numbers in case you need it. I'll head back to the grid icon. I can send a message out with the pager icon, and maybe I need to send one message that goes to all the residents in my schedule instead of one message at a time. That's a handy time saver. I could send a mass page to all residents and say, hey, Grand Rounds has changed locations. Make sure you know about that. We'll talk about some of these other icons when we get our schedule built in a few minutes, our sample schedule. This one, for example, lets you submit requests. We'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. Let's say I'm part of this schedule and I don't really need to know everything that everybody's doing. I'm one of the perfusion call people, so I don't care about consults and day, hospitalist work. I just want to see my own row. You can choose from the drop-down menu at the top here and kind of carve out the other part of the schedule that you don't need. So this is just the perfusion call stuff. You can also build custom combinations of rows. So you might have like a east side and a west side, and you can have those rows be separated from the others. Maybe I need to see all the rows, but highlight my own name, or highlight my name and a coworker's name. That might be helpful. Our goal with this view has been to make it as easy as possible and as fast as possible for people to get to the info they need to see. Down at the bottom of this schedule grid, there's a time and date stamp, and this lets people know when the schedule was last updated, who to contact if they have any questions. Anthony's the admin for this schedule, so there's his email. And then there's a pager directory with everybody's number next to their name down at the bottom. I can click a number and send a message out like I did before. I can also click on somebody's name and pull up their personal schedule. Here's Dr. Blodgett. She's one of our perfusionists. This is her last perfusion call for the month. That's today. And she's off this coming weekend, which she's excited about. She could sync up her own personal Amion assignments with her Google Calendar or iCal, iPhone Outlook, whatever she might use. The system will give her a really specific URL that she can drop into one of those systems. This is a great tool for any provider who is needing to keep their work assignments in sync with all their personal stuff. That's handy. The way it works is that if Anthony, the schedule admin, were to put Dr. Blodgett on call tomorrow, a minute or two later, that data is going to flow out into Blodgett's Outlook calendar. And if Dr. Blodgett and her husband share an Outlook calendar to know who's going to pick up Jimmy from soccer practice that day, they'll be able to see that conflict straight away. So it stays in sync in basically real time, which is kind of neat. Years ago, you had to manually update those schedule syncs, but these days it's automatic. All right, so that's what a schedule looks like when it's been built and published out to amion.com. Just a reminder or a recap, this information that we're looking at is out at the website. We had to log in with a shared access code to view it. We can't make any changes out here. It's kind of read only, like putting it behind a class bulletin board and letting people see what we've posted for them. What we'll do next is use the on-call program I mentioned earlier to build a schedule. We'll start with something basic and get a little more complex as we go. Any questions out there? This is usually a good point to stop and make sure everybody's on the same page. For anybody who maybe joined in a little bit late, there's the chat window within Zoom, and that's kind of where we've been talking back and forth. Everybody with me so far? I'll head back to amion.com, the website. We can take a peek around here a little bit. There are some pretty self-explanatory links. There's an order link. Although I would say if you are part of a hospital that's using Amion and you're joining them, we might already have a license for you and a password for you. So in that case, head to the bottom and click the contact link and reach out to our team. I am the head, quote unquote, of a small but super resourceful and available team of support techs. So if you have a question, reach out to us. You need someone to share screens with you and walk you through a feature in the system. Maybe send an email to the support email. There it is. And let us know a time or two that works for you, that kind of thing. We're pretty lean and mean over here, and we like to make sure people are using the system, in the most appropriate and fitting way based on their needs. So drop us a line anytime. There are other explanations of messaging, scheduling. You can see as I click back and forth, we're in the middle of a website makeover. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a nice, a little bit of a prettier looking set of fonts, which is exciting. The one link that schedulers will definitely use out at amion.com is the download link over at the bottom left. This is the spot you would head if you need to install that on-call schedule building application I mentioned. Now, there are a couple different versions out here, and most recently there is an online version. We took the on-call program and put it in the cloud. So for folks who have trouble installing things, or who might be at a VA and are unable to install things, although I think the folks online right now from the VA can install the on-call program. But for anybody who's needing to work on it without installation, that's possible as well. And I'm excited to say that in a 6 months to a year, we're going to have this schedule building software turned into a very neat looking, highly functional website. Exciting news for me and the team. But anyway, you download this program to your machine if you are a schedule builder and editor. I've got it on my machine, so I won't actually download it here, but I will open it up. And it's going to take me to the last schedule I was working on. And hopefully this giant schedule doesn't overwhelm anybody. This is a big one. It's a complicated residency style schedule that includes block rotation components. I'm not going to work in this schedule right now, but I'm going to open a different schedule. As I start to click around in the program here, you might recognize some of these moves from Microsoft Word or Excel. The file menu that I've clicked on up at the top has new and open and save and print, and a lot of those other moves that you can, or I should say, a lot of those moves you can make with other systems. Like if you had an Excel document open, you could print it. Same kind of idea here. This is a Windows application, just like those. The only difference with this is that it can speak to amion.com, the website. I'm able to publish this schedule if I need to, or if I'm ready to. I can also click File and Open, and I can open a schedule file from Amion. So I could open something local on my machine, although that's less and less common these days. I'm going to open from Amion based on my schedule's admin password. I'm going to pop my schedule open for me to edit. Now I'll explain what these icons in the system do in just a moment here, but what I want to do first is take us through the basic day-to-day maintenance of a schedule. The kind of move that most people make from one day to the next. Out at amion.com at the website, I'm going to log in with a slightly different shared access code here. AZ4 is going to take us to one of my really small, basic sample schedules. This group is not part of a big hospital-wide enterprise. It's just a single standalone account with just a few people working each day. I'm going to take a peek at the calendar layout because I think that looks better. And today, which is the 28th, hard to believe, I've got Tommy Eastman. T. Eastman is on call today. He's taking this call service. Everybody knows that by looking at the schedule, but you know what? He just called our boss and he's got to stay home and take care of his kids who are sick with COVID, they're fine, but they can't be left home alone. So he's gonna hang out with them. And my boss calls me and says, "Hey, Lee, you're the schedule editor. Can you make a change to the schedule and put somebody else on?" I'll say, "Sure, yep, I see that assignment. Let me pop open my on-call program and head down to the 28th. I'll click on that assignment. And as I do click on that assignment, you'll see it's selected yellow. That yellow is where my cursor lives. The other stuff you see, the highlighted pink, is just because my highlighter tool is turned on. It's highlighting Eastman's other assignments for me. I'll turn that off. There's a lot of noise on this schedule. I use this as a demo sort of area quite a bit. So there are notes and clocks for custom shift times and overlapping circles for LinkedIn rows, and I'll explain more of this stuff later. But for the moment, I really just want to change this assignment. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard and take Tommy Eastman out of there. I could type another name in. I could use my info box, my floating toolbar. It might be the easiest thing to do, and put R Saturn on instead. There we go. R Saturn is now on the 28th in the call row. All set. The last move for me to make is to click File and Publish to Amion. So under the File menu, next to New and Open and Save and Print, I've got Publish to Amion. This is the move that lets me push this schedule file from my computer out to the website. The system remembers my administrative password, it remembers my contact email, and it knows how far ahead I want to let people see this schedule. They'll be able to see things through the end of December, the end of the year. Okay, looking good. I'll say Save to Amion, and then depending on my internet connection, it takes a second or two before I get the message, your file is updated. All right, very good. Let's go back to the website, and anybody logging in fresh or refreshing their screen will see my my update. Let's see, the 21st, Eastman. Let me go back to my table, or I'm sorry, my calendar view. Here we go. There's our Saturn. So we made a change to the website, just like that. We use the schedule editor to change what people see online. Let's do that one more time. My boss calls back and says, "You know what, Tommy Eastman's significant other is going to watch the kids. Can you put him back on for today?" Turns out it was a false alarm. And I say, "Sure, boss, no problem. That's easy. I'll just pop open my schedule editor, head back to the 28th, delete, we'll put Eastman back in, all set, file, publish to Amion. The system remembers my info, and save to Amion, gets my schedule editor updated." There we go. Back out at the website, if I refresh my screen, I got Tommy Eastman listed back on call today. Simple as that. So that's what the day-to-day working in an existing schedule is like. Pretty straightforward. All right. Now let's get into building a schedule together from scratch. This time under the File menu, I'm going to choose New. Just like Microsoft Word, if you clicked File and New, you'd be making a new schedule file. So Amion's been around for 20 years, and we have some pretty big and some pretty small schedules out there. There are like 10,000 or so groups using Amion at the moment, kind of neat. And we still just offer schedules. That's really all we do. But there are two kinds of schedules. There's provider health professional group schedules and residency fellowship schedules. And the reason there's this distinction is that 20 years ago, Amion was used mostly by residency programs. And those residency programs needed a block rotation component, so they could say that their trainees were doing this rotation at this time, and based on that rotation, they had certain clinics and certain call. After a few years, a lot of those residents graduated and became fellows and attendings in their own right, and no longer needed that block rotation component. So we built for them a more straightforward provider health professional style schedule, which just has call, shift, or clinic without any rotation or team tied to it. Groups still use both of these now. I'm going to choose the top option for the purpose of showing you around today, but if you're poking around the Amion site or talking to anybody on our team, you may hear the words attending schedule and resident schedule. mentioned, and that's this choice here. We can choose the attending style or the residency style. I'll choose the attending style for the moment. And I'm going to zip through building some constructs for our schedule. The general setup that you see on screen here is the spot where I'm going to add the things people do. This is my first move. I'm adding services. Services are what folks get assigned to. So I'm typing night call. I can click add to get it to populate down below, or I can just click enter on my keyboard. I'll just add a few arbitrary services here. I hope this makes sense. I just typed in whatever I wanted. I could have a dog walker service or a librarian service. Pretty much anything that people get assigned to do at a certain day, at a certain time, can be added here. There's no hard and fast rule within Amion. It's very, very open-ended. You can also add as many services as you'd like. There's no limit to that. So I'll stick with a handful of services, but some schedules have 80 or 90 rows on them. And Amion doesn't charge by the service or by the number of people on a schedule. So add as many as you'd like. Don't worry about incurring any added cost or anything. The green font services here are preloaded off-schedule services, and we'll talk about those more in a minute. Basically, when I assign someone to vacation, they are off schedule and not available to do other stuff. So I'll stick with my handful of services there. I'm going to add some staff types. These are the categories that staff can fall into. And again, these are open-ended, as are the names for our staff. I'll add a couple people for each staff type. Maybe we need a couple PAs, a couple RNs, and a couple MDs. How about that? And again, you could have 100 people in your list of staff, but I'll just stick with a handful for the purpose of building our schedule today. I'm going to leave everybody available unless they request time off. If we had a moonlighter's schedule of some kind, we might want to set it up so that they can request when they want to work. But for right now, we'll have them be available by default. And that's it. I'm all set. I can close my general setup window. If by chance I forgot to add a row or a person, the general setup option is under my file menu, so I can always add to this schedule grid if I need to. I'm going to click and drag the guide bars here in the upper left to kind of stretch and skew things, have it fit my screen a little bit better. I can make my columns wider or narrow. I can make my rows taller. I also encourage people to mess around with their font size. Often I run into people who are building a schedule with a tiny, tiny font size and squinting at the screen. I always encourage people to make the font as big as you can stand it so you don't have to squint at the screen. And from here, we could dive, I suppose we could dive right into making a set of assignments. Night call, 1 click per day gets me a week's worth of night call. Now we're doing this by hand. This is us manually scheduling. There is an automatic scheduling tool that we're going to look at in a few minutes, but I hope it's obvious that, you know, if you do have to manually schedule, 1 click per day ought to do it. There's a question in the chat window. Can multiple admin make changes to the schedule? Yeah, absolutely. So while I'm working in the schedule here, the schedule's checked out to me. I'm the only person who can be editing in it at a single time. But once I'm done, I'll end up publishing my schedule to Amion. And if somebody else is working from another computer, they'll be able to open from Amion. They can pick up right where I left off. That's kind of a neat thing. There's an entry in the help index on sharing scheduling. That's a good step-by-step. And and speaking of rules, good timing for your rules question. We're going to build some right now. Let's do it. Let's see. I'm going to open up my info box, my trustee sidekick. You'll see me have this window open most of the time. It's a dynamic window, meaning that its contents will change based on what I click on. If I click on the blank gray background, info box says, okay, here's your date range. And do you want to track your changes? If I click on the spot where a name belongs, I get a list of names. The info box says, at your service, here's a list of people who can work in the spot where your cursor lives. There are also some really slightly more advanced things you can do with your list of names, like have a running tally of how many times each person in the list has worked, for that month or for that year. You can also have a busy bar that shows their upcoming assignments, but I don't want to dive too far in. Oh, there's a question, how did I get to the calendar area? Sure, we're using the on-call program with the gray background. This is the schedule editing software, the on-call program. It's like an application like Word or Excel that sits on my machine. And by default, it gets me to the calendar view. There is also a table view. You can look at the schedule in either view, table or calendar view. It doesn't make a difference. However the schedule looks when you go to publish it to the web is what your staff are going to see online. Sometimes I like the table view, this kitchen table looking icon, because the system really lets me squeeze things together, pack it in very tight, and it uses abbreviations instead of full names. So if I've got like a big clinic schedule with 80 people on at a time, it's nice to be able to see the whole thing without having to scroll around. If I had a big clinic schedule while I was in the calendar view, I might have to spend a lot of time scrolling up and down and left and right. Either one's fine to work in. I'll probably stick with the calendar view for the most part. Good question. Let's see. I'm going to start to pick up the pace here because these are going to be rules that I add pretty arbitrarily just to show them off. Everybody usually everybody uses the system a little bit differently. So if you need me to slow down, don't be afraid to ask. I'm going to pop open my info box. I'm going to click on one of the services along the left, and we're going to talk about night call. Now that I have night call selected, the info box shows me all things relative to night call. Well, maybe night call belongs down at the bottom of our list of services here, and AM clinic belongs at the top. Okay, good. Night call runs 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Night call should run overnight, say 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., something like that. Is it staffed by all skill levels? Sure, anybody can work night call. Is it staffed every day? Sure, that makes sense. Night call happens all the time. Are certain days worth more points than others? This isn't used too often, but you might say night call earns people 5 points if they work it on a Saturday night. There's also a day after rules button that opens up another window. Day after rules are pretty common. We might have a rule that says if you work night call, no AM clinic for you the next morning. You can also make an on rule so that if somebody does something, they automatically do something else the next day. The only other window we can pop open is the one that lets us assign a pager to night call. If people share a common pager, it'll list this pager regardless of who's working, instead of listing their personal pager. So let's say night call has a pager. It's 555-777-8888. Good. We've got our day after rule for night call. That'll work. We said Saturday nights on night call are worth more points. That'll come into play when we run a report and do some number crunching in a minute. I'll leave the other windows open because I do want to say that AM clinic, which runs in the AM, say 8 a.m. to noon, happens on Monday through Friday, no weekends or holidays, which is a little bit different than our weekend service. The weekend service happens Saturday, Sunday, and holiday. And then our SICU service is not staffed by everybody, but it's staffed by MDs. So I'm going to turn off the other staff types there and have it just be staffed by MDs, which means my list of available people is going to be a whole lot shorter. Now only red names can work in the SICU row. So I moved a bit quickly there, but those are just a handful of the rules we can build that are related to our services. In a minute, we'll add some rules about people on the other side of things. We'll make them available and unavailable. I want to do one more thing. I want to do what's sort of a next level move. This is a Amion 201 kind of move. I'm going to click window and set up a call and shift pattern. You can probably see from this window menu that there are quite a few features tucked in here. I'm going to make a call and shift pattern called weekend, and the call and shift pattern has the same anonymous person working Saturday and Sunday. There's a help page and video about this feature if anybody wants to learn more, but basically I'm telling the system that if you get stuck working weekend, it's not a variable thing, meaning anybody can be any time. It's going to follow my call weekend service. So if someone lands on a Saturday, guess what? They also work Sunday. That's going to be an automatic thing. Oh, good question in the chat window. When you receive the maximum time off requests for a day or week, can these be automatically rejected? The answer right now is not yet. We're actually working on that right now. At the moment, people can make requests and there's no limit to those. Let's talk about that since that's kind of the next thing that's going to happen. So here we are in our working schedule. We talked about the table view and the calendar view. The next screen or next icon or button from the top left is this face icon, this eyes and nose. This takes you to the work preferences page. This is like a profile page for each person. And this is related to requests. It's also related to things like contact info. It's related to availability. I can say that we don't want Patel to work on Wednesdays. So she's unavailable for Wednesdays. She's a half-time employee, so she only works 50%. She might have the abbreviation PTL in the system instead of PA, so she doesn't get confused with everybody else. We can set up targets. That's another advanced move, setting up targets for people to work. And we can also dictate where a person's allowed to work. I can click on the Works At button, and in the window that opens, I get to dictate where that person can be. Maybe Patel doesn't cover AM clinic since she's getting ready to retire in a few weeks. There's a drop-down menu at the top that contains our off-schedule services like CME, sick, and vacation. And I'm going to choose from this list, just arbitrarily grab vacation and then double-click on the schedule to put Patel on vacation for this week in July. Now that's us doing it manually. That's us putting a person on vacation manually. The question in the chat window was alluding to the fact that you can also have your staff submit preferences online. So here we are back at amion.com looking at the schedule the way staff would. And I'm clicking the sun with sunglasses because I want to submit some preferences. So like I mentioned, there's no limit to the number of requests that can come in, but it hasn't been a huge problem in part because these folks can see what their coworkers have asked for. They can look at the schedule and see that somebody's asked for time off. Let's see, this person on the 12th, G Pluto, has that day has listed as unavailable. So I know that when I'm making my request, I might not want to ask for that day. Maybe I'll get the next Friday off since I don't want to, my scheduler is not going to let two people be away at the same time. So that's kind of a handy guide. Usually people know how much they can request and they know that if someone already has the day off, that they won't be able to get the second day. One of the things we're working on adding is also a vacation bank. And the bank of time off will let people know how many days they've got, how many days they've got left, that kind of thing. That's kind of exciting. That's in the works now. But the nice part about this is that, after someone submitted their request, they're guided by what they see their coworkers doing. And then when they submit them, they flow automatically into the schedule editor. So they land in this program without you, the scheduler, having to edit them or enter them, kind of neat. Back in the olden days, I used to have to send out an email to my staff and I'd get like 40 or 50 replies. I'd have to collate or sort through all those replies and build myself a vacation schedule. And then after the vacation schedule was done, I could finally start making the real schedule, was a real pain in the neck. It took me 4 or 5 hours every month to do it. These days, I have my staff submit their preferences online. The system now knows what they've requested. I like to, as the mouse over note hints at, I like to control click for the alternate view of this page. That way I can see that if a bunch of people have vacation on the same day, I can say no to somebody. I can always deny those requests if necessary. And I can keep tabs on things. Once I've got all those requests in the system, and it's time for the fun part, we can have the system build us a schedule that takes all that stuff into account. This is, I promise this is fun if you're a scheduling geek like me. If you're looking under the window menu, you'll see the auto scheduler. So we've got all those requests in. It's time to let the system pay attention to our rules and all those availability requests that came in and actually make us a schedule for whatever time frame we want. We could do the whole year if we wanted to. I will fill in the SICU service first because I know there are a limited number of people who can work there. The weekends are pretty sought after. Watch as I fill in the night call row. It's not going to touch the stuff I entered by hand. It's just going to fill in the holes in the schedule with the other available people. And last but not least, whoever's left over can work in the AM clinic. Now I've got a couple conflicts on my schedule. It's letting me know that I've got folks working in AM clinic on the same day that they're doing night call. And that might be okay, might be fine with us for that to be the case. We didn't build a rule about that, but if we change our mind and decide that that's not okay, I can clear out the AM clinic. We can use our info box to say that there's a day after rule for AM clinic. It's not really a day after rule, it's kind of like a day of rule, but folks on night call should not do AM clinic on the same day and vice versa. Now that I've added that rule in, I can reapply the auto scheduler, and now we have fewer conflicts here. Now it's paying attention to that. Now I'm moving pretty quickly. Let me know if I am losing anybody, but we basically end up with a July and August schedule with all of our assignments built in. Oop, I don't think I added SICU assignments for August, but all of our rules got followed, which is kind of neat. I'm going to turn on my highlighter tool and click on Patel, who's our example. She doesn't work on Wednesdays, and she's off on vacation that second full week in July. Anybody who's doing night call is off from AM clinic the next day. That's good. Nobody does AM clinic and night call on the same day either. Only red names in the SICU row, only MDs work there. Anybody who gets weekend call gets both Saturday and Sunday back to back, following our pattern. Oh, and Patel doesn't do any AM clinic because she's not allowed to. So the system really followed all of our constraints and all the availability that people had listed. Kind of neat, right? It did all the heavy lifting for us. Once this part is done, I like to publish the schedule out to the website and let my staff swap shifts with each other. This isn't a feature that every group uses, but you can turn it on, and I find it really useful. I can let my staff propose and accept swaps with each other. One person can propose the schedule, or propose the swap rather, and the other person can accept or decline the swap depending on what they think. You can also have staff pick up open shifts if you'd like. But from start to finish, I have my staff submit those requests. I sip my coffee and wait for 12:01 on Friday afternoon when I've given them the deadline. Once those requests are in, I use the auto scheduler to do what we just did. And then I push the schedule out to the website and I let my staff swap shifts to iron out the details. And the last thing I do is to take a look at the statistics page and make sure that everything's kind of fairly divided. I'll use my trusty sidekick to take a look at the statistics page. It's tallying up the number of shifts people worked by service. So there's a row for each person and a column for each service. I can tally up hours or shifts. I can tally by day of the week. This is kind of neat. I get a column for each day of the week. I also have an additional couple columns here. One of them over to the right is the points column. The points column takes into account the points that we gave each service. Remember, we said that if you work night call on a Saturday night, you earn 5 points. Anyway, there are lots of things you can do with this statistics page. I won't go too far down this rabbit hole. One of my favorite sort of geeky things to do on this page is to click and drag from one person to another. You can take a total away from one person and drop it on somebody else's lap. And we call that tweak the tallies. You can actually adjust the schedule from the statistics page. The other icons up at the top here to the right of this little divider bar are pretty simple tools that I'll breeze through in just a moment. I see a couple questions in the chat window that I want to make sure get answered. Let's see, how do I provide the ability to my physicians to add their preferences to Amion? It should be there by default. The way I like to do it, and sorry, I should back up. The sun with sunglasses icon above your schedule is the thing they would click, but I like to make it easier for them. I like to go to amion.com and log in as an administrator. Once I log in as an admin, I can send out a message to those folks. So I can send an email with a work preference form. And I can say, preferences due by Friday at noon, something like that. The work preferences form that they get will have a really specific link. It looks like, nope, I don't have an email address in there for everybody, but it's a link in an email that they can click, and it takes them straight to their preference form online. So instead of them having to remember a personal password, it takes them straight to their preference submission form, makes it easy for them. Kind of neat. Michael asks, how do you print the schedule to view the holes in the schedule? Yeah, good question. There is a feature that will highlight the hole. If you right click on the highlighter tool up at the top of the schedule builder, there's a holes highlighter. It doesn't look very good on this page because I have mostly holes here, but if I start to add assignments, you'll see those holes go away. And that is generally a handy tool. If you did need to print the schedule, it does print pretty cleanly. You can click File, and I won't be able to print and show you that, so I'll click the print preview. The print preview includes a time and date stamp so people know how fresh that piece of paper is if they're hanging it up on a cubicle wall or something like that. Question, do we have a training doc manual for physicians to understand how they can use it effectively? Typically what we do, and I should say that most often, in most cases, folks sign up for Amion and they tell their physicians, log into amion.com like this, and physicians see it and they say, okay, I see what I need to see. For folks using the more advanced features like submitting requests or swapping shifts, we usually recommend setting up a meeting with your group and one of us here on the Amion team. The best way to do that is probably to email support@amion.com with the time and date that you'll have the group together, and we'll walk them through in a Zoom meeting like this, or a Teams meeting, or a Google meeting, and answer any questions they have. Wild as it might seem, we're pretty hands-on still, even though we've grown quite a bit. We like to make sure every group has kind of, what's the word, concierge level help, because the system is used in so many different ways. We want to make sure that they're comfortable. Let's see, let's breeze through those remaining icons up at the top here. I'll head back to the schedule in calendar view, and I'll talk about the blue dot over the white dot, that's schedule content. This is really just a window that lets you turn the rows in your schedule on or off. And also, while you're here, you can build different subsets. I might have an AM night schedule, and one of my other subsets might be my SICU weekend schedule. So now I have different kind of pages or different subsets of my big schedule grid. Imagine having a schedule with 80 or 90 rows. It might be nice to chop it up by east side or west side. Oh, and the question that just came in the chat window might be a timely one. I hope this answers that question. You could set up different grids for your different clinics this way. And you can, change the title the way I did, just by typing into that black font at the top. That's scheduled content. You've seen the info box, the little floating toolbar, my trusty sidekick. That's what the eye icon at the top is. These all have mouse over notes as well. You can change your date range. The sigma with the blue arrow through it lets you change the number of days on screen to whatever you'd like. I personally like to leave it set to a month and then tack on like the last day of the prior month and maybe the first day of the upcoming month, so I can kind of see what's leading into my schedule. That's a handy, expanding the date range like that. You can customize your shift times. That's this white clock icon here. If I have a particular day that needs to be running on a different set of hours, maybe this Tuesday the 5th, clinic gets out 15 minutes early. And maybe that's true every Tuesday. The blue arrow at the top lets me set that to be the case every Tuesday from then on. Clinic gets out a little bit early. You can also deduct meal times from tallies. There's a lot of hidden features that folks have asked us to add over the years. Oh, there's a question about statistics. That's the 4th icon in from the top left. These 4 icons in the upper left are the main views. There's table icon, so the table view of the schedule, the calendar view of the schedule, the little face for personal profile, contact numbers, vacations, anything specific to a person, and then the sigma here, this Greek letter sigma for statistics and tallies. Not to be confused with the sigma with the blue arrow through it, which is tally over. So that's like the date range adjuster. But yeah, this sigma 4th from the top left, that's the tallies page. There's an icon that looks like a square that's been slashed in half, and that's the one we would use to split a shift. Oh, good. Thanks for asking. Yeah. The split shift icon lets you basically take a shift and split it between multiple people. Now, I just put Patel as taking over for Ahmed halfway through his AM clinic. So Patel does the second half of that. Looks like I've got some kind of conflict here. Oh, I put Patel on Wednesdays when she's not supposed to work Wednesdays. Oops, looks like I need to split that shift with somebody else. You can also do 3-way splits. There's a lot of stuff built in here. Notes are really helpful. They can be added to a person or to a thing that people do. Note windows don't have to be quite that big. They can be color coded. They can be public. They can be private. They're super flexible. Notes can belong to people. They can belong to services. They can belong to dates. If you tie a note to a date, it's kind of neat because it becomes its own online meeting schedule. There's an icon at the top of my sample schedule that looks like a person in front of a screen. These are notes that have been added to days to let people know that they have a conference coming up. Kind of cool. Last but not least, there's our highlighter tool. You've seen that in action. I can click on somebody's name and highlight their assignments. And the question mark just takes you to our website's help index out online. Now, there's a whole bunch more stuffed into this program. Someone asked me this morning to help them set up calendar notifications, change notifications, so that if the schedule changes, people get an email. I helped somebody right-click on a service and set up a staffing link so that data from another Amion schedule could be pulled into their schedule and just be mirrored in, so the rows are updated automatically in both places. Basically, for about 20 years, we've said yes to everything that people have asked us to add to the system. And because of that, we have been always playing catch up and have not overhauled the way this system looks. That's next. At the beginning of next year, we're going to make this a much prettier looking schedule building tool. But that's about it from me for Amion 101. We're getting close to the top of the hour here, so I just want to be mindful of everybody's time. If you guys have questions for me or want me to dig a little deeper into something, I'd be glad to do that. For anybody who joined in late, we've been typing back and forth in the little chat window in the Zoom meeting. There's a question just in, do team members get auto notified when their shifts get swapped? Oh yeah, that's an automatic thing. When somebody proposes a swap with somebody else, it looks like this. I'll pretend to be somebody who wants to swap a shift in August. I'm on night backup and I want to propose a swap with one of my coworkers. It kind of outlines the details of what's going to happen, and then I get to add a note if I want to. I'll take the night backup from this other person on Sunday if they agree to take my Tuesday. And I'll say, hey, you owe the one. When I submit that request, there's an automatic email that goes out, and it looks a bit like this. So the person who's having the request proposed to them gets the details and the note, and then they can confirm or decline that swap. Yep, once the calendar is confirmed or the swap is confirmed, it actually, in this case, it's set to be approved by the schedule admin. So the admin gets an email. And once that's been approved, they'll get a notification that things have changed. Yep, everybody gets an email, both people involved in the swap, including the admin, right? Sure thing. Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, we're at the top of the hour here. I'll probably end the meeting shortly, and I'll send this recording around to anybody who might want it. I do think the recording that's out at the website's help index now might be a little bit better. I'm not quite as caffeinated as I was last time, but if this one passes muster, I'll add it to the website's posted recordings of these sessions as well. And yeah, just a reminder, we do this every week, open to anybody who wants to join in. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for the great questions. I hope you guys have a nice rest of the week. Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good one.